In this video, you're going to experience something more than just a lesson. You're going to hear a real story, a story that has power, purpose, and a voice that can change the way you see success. It's the story of Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. A man who grew up poor, watched his father struggle, faced rejection, and still rose to build one of the most recognizable brands in the world. But this video isn't just about Howard. It's about you, your growth, your learning, and your English journey. Many people try to learn English with long vocabulary lists and grammar drills. That might help, but it's not how we learn to speak fluently in the real world. The truth is, language becomes stronger when it's connected to emotion. That's why stories are powerful. When you listen to a story, your brain pays more attention. You feel something. You remember more. You learn without even realizing it. In this video, you will improve your English naturally by reading, listening, and speaking along with a real motivational story. You'll follow every step of Howard's journey, from a boy in Brooklyn to the CEO of Starbucks. Each chapter is written in clear, simple English. The sentences are easy to follow. The rhythm is slow and natural. Whether you're an English learner at an intermediate level or just starting out, this story is for you. As you listen, read along with the subtitles. Speak out loud if you can. Repeat the sentences. Learn how words sound in real conversation. Train your ears, your mouth, and your confidence. This is how fluency grows, not from perfection, but from practice. This video is not just English content. It's an experience. You will learn new words. You will hear real sentence patterns. You will absorb how English is used in storytelling. But even more important, you will feel inspired. Because Howard's story is not about luck. It's about belief. It's about taking risks. It's about building something from nothing, just like you're building your English step by step. So, if you want to feel motivated and improve your language skills at the same time, stay with us. Don't just listen, connect. Don't just watch, practice. Turn this hour into a moment that moves you forward. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been learning with us before, welcome back. This is Read and Learn English, and this is more than a video. It's your space to grow. So, take a deep breath, open your mind, and get ready. Let's begin the story. Chapter 1. A Boy from Brooklyn. Howard Schultz was born in 1953 in a tough neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. His family did not have much money. They lived in public housing in a place called the Bayview Projects. These buildings were small, crowded, and cold in the winter. The rent was low because many people there were poor. Life was not easy, but Howard didn't complain. He just knew this was his world. His father, Fred Schultz, worked very hard, but he never had a steady job. Sometimes he drove trucks. Sometimes he cleaned offices. Sometimes he did deliveries. But he was never given respect. He didn't get health insurance. He didn't get paid holidays. If he got sick or injured, he lost his job. There was no safety net. One day, when Howard was just 7 years old, his father hurt his leg at work. He slipped and fell on the ice. After that, he couldn't work for a while. The family had no money, and no help came. That moment stayed in Howard's mind forever. Howard saw the pain in his father's eyes, not just physical pain, but emotional pain. His father felt useless. He felt broken. Howard didn't understand everything back then, but he knew one thing. He never wanted to feel that powerless. He never wanted to live without choices. At school, Howard was like many kids, curious, energetic, and a little lost. He loved sports. He played football and basketball in the local park. That park was like an escape from his home life. But even in school, he knew he was different. Other kids had new clothes, new shoes, and two working parents. He wore hand-me-downs, clothes that other people had already used. He sometimes felt embarrassed, but he also felt driven. Deep inside, he started to dream. His mother, Elaine, was different from his father. She had a strong belief in education. She often told Howard, "You can be more. You don't have to stay here forever." She didn't have much money to give him, but she gave him hope. She believed in him. She told him that books could take him further than any train. Howard listened to her words and took them seriously. He started reading more. He paid attention in class. He began to think, maybe I don't have to stay in the projects forever. Still, life was hard. Howard had to grow up fast. He got a part-time job as a teenager to help the family. He sold newspapers. He washed windows. He even worked at a local cafe serving drinks. Every dollar mattered. But every job also taught him something. He learned how to talk to people. He learned how to listen. He learned the value of hard work. When Howard was in high school, he played sports to stay motivated. He wasn't the biggest or strongest, but he had heart. Coaches noticed his work ethic. He wasn't afraid to push himself. And soon, something incredible happened. He got a football scholarship to Northern Michigan University. That meant he could go to college, something no one in his family had ever done. Leaving Brooklyn was both exciting and scary. He had never been on a plane before. He had never been far from his family. But he was hungry to grow. At college, he studied communications. He wasn't sure what job he would get after, but he knew this was his chance to build a different life. College wasn't easy. He didn't always fit in. Other students came from wealthier families. They had nice clothes, cars, and didn't worry about money. Howard had to work multiple jobs just to pay for food and books. He sometimes felt like an outsider, but he never quit. He remembered his father's struggle. He remembered his mother's words. He kept moving forward. After college, Howard returned to New York and began looking for work. He started in sales, first with a coffee machine company. He wasn't passionate about coffee yet. He just wanted to earn a living. But in that job, he learned something powerful: how to sell, how to connect, and how to tell a story. These were the skills that would help him later in ways he could not imagine. Looking back, Howard often says that growing up poor gave him something special. It gave him empathy. It gave him drive. It taught him that leadership is not about being the boss. It's about lifting others up. He remembered how his father was treated, without dignity, without care, and made a promise to himself: if I ever have a company, I will treat people with respect. No one should feel invisible. That promise, made quietly as a boy in Brooklyn, would one day shape the heart of Starbucks. But at this point, Howard was just a young man with big dreams and no clear path. He didn't come from business. He didn't come from money. What he had was hunger. He wanted something more, not just for himself, but for people like his father, who worked hard and still felt like they didn't matter. This was the beginning. This was chapter 1. A boy from Brooklyn. a boy with a front row seat to struggle, a boy who had no idea that one day the world would know his name. But deep inside, Howard Schultz had already started climbing, one step at a time. Chapter 2. The Seed of Ambition. Howard Schultz arrived at Northern Michigan University in the fall of 1971. He was far from home, far from Brooklyn, far from the world he knew. The town was small, quiet, and cold. The people were different. They spoke differently. They dressed differently. Many had grown up in stable homes, with more money and fewer worries. At first, Howard felt like he didn't belong, but he reminded himself of why he was there. He had received a football scholarship, not because he was the best athlete, but because he never gave up. That same mindset helped him now. He wasn't here to fit in. He was here to grow. The classrooms felt strange at first. The textbooks were expensive. He had to work part-time jobs to afford them. Sometimes he cleaned buildings. Sometimes he worked at the campus coffee shop. He didn't complain. Every job was a step. Every dollar was one more step away from the life he wanted to leave behind. College showed Howard something new. Possibility. He met people who talked about careers, not just jobs. He met students who believed they could change the world. For the first time, Howard began to imagine a life where he could create something, not just survive, but build. The seed of ambition started to grow. He changed majors and began studying communications. He loved learning how people connect. He studied marketing, speech, persuasion. He watched interviews and read stories about business leaders. These people had created companies, built movements, and inspired millions. Howard wondered, why not me? Not in a proud way, but in a curious, hungry way. He didn't know how, but he wanted to try. One cold winter night, Howard sat alone in the library. Snow was falling outside. Most students had gone home. He was reading a magazine article about an advertising executive who had built a major company from nothing. Howard was amazed, not just by the money, but by the journey. This man had failed many times. People had told him, "You can't do this." But he did it anyway. That story lit something inside Howard. It was a quiet fire, but it burned deep. From that day on, Howard started thinking differently. He didn't just want a safe job. He wanted a career with meaning. He wanted to create something people would care about. He wanted to build something that would last. Still, the road wasn't easy. There were times he felt lost. There were times he doubted himself. He didn't have family connections. He didn't have money. But he had driven. He had learned that from his parents. He knew how to work hard. He knew how to keep going when things got tough. After graduating, Howard returned to New York. He was the first in his family to finish college. That alone was a victory. But he didn't stop there. He took a job as a sales trainee at Xerox, one of the top companies at the time. He wore a cheap suit and carried a worn-out briefcase, but he walked into that office every day with pride. At Xerox, Howard learned the art of selling, not pushing, not pressuring, but understanding, listening, solving problems. He was a natural. In a few months, he became one of the top salespeople in his division. People noticed. His managers praised him. For the first time in his life, Howard felt respected in the workplace. But still, something was missing. He wasn't passionate about photocopiers. He wasn't waking up excited. He wanted more. He wanted to be part of something that mattered. A year later, he joined a company that sold coffee machines to offices. It didn't seem exciting at first, but this was the step that would change everything. One day, while reviewing sales numbers, Howard noticed something unusual. A small company in Seattle kept buying more and more coffee machines. The name of that company? Starbucks. Howard was curious. He had never heard of Starbucks before. He called them. He asked questions. He learned that Starbucks wasn't just selling coffee. They were selling quality. They cared about their beans. They cared about the experience. They had just 4 stores at the time, all in Seattle, but something about them felt different. In 1981, Howard flew out to Seattle to visit Starbucks. As soon as he walked into one of their stores, he felt it. The smell of fresh coffee, the wooden counters, the friendly staff, the way customers smiled as they sipped their drinks. It wasn't just coffee. It was a feeling. It was connection. Howard was hooked. He went back to New York, but he couldn't stop thinking about Starbucks. A few months later, he left his high-paying job to join them as director of marketing. His friends thought he was crazy. Why leave a big, stable company for a tiny coffee business on the West Coast? But Howard had learned something important. Your dreams don't have to make sense to anyone else. He packed his bags and moved to Seattle. This was the start of something new. He was no longer just working a job. He was on a mission. He didn't know exactly where it would lead, but he felt it in his gut. This was right. Howard had entered a new world, a world of ideas, creativity, leadership, and risk. The boy from Brooklyn had taken his first big leap. The seed of ambition had been planted, and now it had begun to grow. Chapter 3: The Coffee Connection. In 1982, Howard Schultz joined Starbucks as the director of marketing. At that time, Starbucks was not a global brand. It wasn't even well known outside of Seattle. The company had only 4 stores. They didn't sell coffee drinks like lattes or cappuccinos. They didn't even serve brewed coffee in cups. Starbucks simply sold coffee beans, machines, and equipment for people to use at home. But Howard saw something deeper. He saw care. He saw passion. Starbucks was serious about quality. They searched for the best beans. They roasted them perfectly. They taught customers about flavor and origin. Howard respected that. He felt lucky to be part of it. But still, something was missing. Starbucks had the product, but not the experience. 1 year later, in 1983, Howard traveled to Italy on a business trip. The purpose was to attend a trade show, but what he found there would change his life forever. He walked the streets of Milan, and for the first time, he experienced Italian coffee culture. Everywhere he looked, there were espresso bars, small, beautiful cafes, elegant counters, baristas in crisp uniforms. People didn't just drink coffee, they lived it. Friends gathered. Businessmen chatted. Old men read the newspaper. Young couples laughed over cappuccinos. Each drink was made with care. Each cup felt like a small ceremony. Howard was amazed. In America, coffee was just a drink, something people grabbed in a rush. In Italy, coffee was a moment. It was connection. It was community. He visited 20 or 30 coffee bars during his trip, some small, some large, all of them buzzing with life. And in everyone, he felt the same thing: belonging. One afternoon, he sat in a small cafe and wrote in his notebook. He had an idea, a vision, a question. What if we brought this experience to the US? Not just coffee beans, not just machines, but the entire atmosphere, the warmth, the human connection, the ritual. He couldn't get it out of his mind. When Howard returned to Seattle, he was on fire with passion. He told the Starbucks founders, "We should serve drinks. We should build cafes like the ones in Italy. We could turn Starbucks into a place where people come together, not just to buy coffee, but to share life." But the founders didn't agree. They didn't want to change the business. They believed in selling high-quality beans and equipment. They weren't interested in running cafes or making espresso drinks. They didn't see the same future Howard did. Howard was frustrated. He believed this could work. He believed America was ready for something more. He didn't want to sell machines forever. He wanted to build an experience. So, he made a bold decision. In 1985, just 2 years after joining Starbucks, Howard left the company. He wasn't angry. He was just determined. If Starbucks wouldn't take the risk, he would do it himself. He started his own company called Il Giornale, named after an Italian newspaper. His goal was simple: bring the Italian espresso bar to America, serve high-quality coffee in beautiful spaces, create a third place, not home, not work, but somewhere in between. But there was one big problem: money. Howard had no savings. He didn't come from wealth, so he did what most people are afraid to do. He started asking. He met with investors. He gave presentations. He told his story over and over. Some people said no. Some laughed. Some didn't believe in coffee culture. But Howard didn't stop. He kept showing up. He kept knocking on doors. Finally, after many rejections, he raised $1.6 million from a small group of investors. It wasn't easy. It took over 200 meetings. But Howard had something money couldn't buy: belief. Il Giornale opened its first store in 1986. The cafe was warm, clean, and welcoming. The baristas wore ties. The drinks were made with care. Customers didn't just get coffee. They got conversation, music, comfort, and people loved it. Soon, Il Giornale had 3 successful stores in Seattle and Vancouver. The model was working. The experience was real. The vision was alive. Then something unexpected happened. In 1987, the original Starbucks owners decided to sell the company. They still didn't want to run cafes. They were tired. They were ready to move on. Howard saw his chance. He reached out to his investors and said, "We must buy Starbucks. We will keep its heart, but we will give it wings." And they did. That year, Howard bought Starbucks for $3.8 million. Now he had the name, he had the stores, and more importantly, he had the dream. But this was only the beginning. Starbucks would soon grow, not just in size, but in meaning. It would become a global symbol of culture, comfort, and community. And it all started with one walk down the streets of Milan, one cup of espresso, one spark of imagination. Howard Schultz didn't invent coffee, but he reimagined how the world experiences it. He saw something ordinary and made it extraordinary. Because that's what vision does. It takes what's in front of everyone and sees what no one else sees. That moment in Italy was not just a coffee trip. It was the coffee connection, the turning point between a job and a mission. The boy from Brooklyn was now building a new kind of company. and the world was about to take notice. Chapter 4. The Big Risk. In 1985, Howard Schultz made a decision that would change his life forever. He left Starbucks. At the time, Starbucks was just a small company selling coffee beans. Howard had tried to convince the owners to serve coffee drinks, to create cafes like the ones he saw in Italy. But they said no. They didn't share his vision. They didn't believe Americans wanted that kind of experience. So Howard walked away. He didn't walk away from a paycheck. He walked away from comfort, from safety, from something he knew, but he believed so deeply in the idea of the espresso bar, the Italian-style cafe full of warmth and connection, that he was willing to start from zero. That decision wasn't easy. It was terrifying. But that's what real vision requires. You have to risk everything. He named his new company Il Giornale after a newspaper he saw in Milan. It sounded elegant, European, different. That's what he wanted. Something that stood out. Something that made people pause and feel something. But a name is just a name. He needed money. He needed partners. He needed people to believe in him. And that's when the real fight began. Howard didn't come from money. He didn't have rich friends or business connections. So, he went out into the world, day after day, night after night, and pitched his dream to anyone who would listen. He didn't talk about profits first. He talked about experience, about creating a place where people could slow down, about building a brand with heart. Most people didn't understand it. They thought he was selling coffee. But Howard wasn't selling coffee. He was selling a feeling. Still, many investors said no. They didn't believe in the idea. Coffee? That's not a business, some said. People won't pay that much just to sit around and drink, others added. America's not Italy. Howard heard all of it. Every rejection stung. Every closed door felt personal. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. He believed too deeply in what he had seen. He believed that people were craving connection, not just caffeine. He believed that a cup of coffee could be more than just a drink. It could be a moment of peace in a noisy world. So he kept going. One meeting, then another, then another. He faced over 200 rejections. 200 times someone said, "No thanks, not interested, doesn't make sense." But Howard refused to quit. He told his story again and again, clearly, passionately, from the heart. And finally, some people started listening. One investor said, "You're not just selling coffee. You're selling a reason for people to show up." That was it. That was the truth. Little by little, the money came together. Not all at once, not easily, but piece by piece. Some investors gave $50,000. Some gave $100,000. In total, Howard raised $1.6 million. It wasn't a huge number by today's standards. But back then, it was everything. He used that money to open the first Il Giornale Cafe in downtown Seattle. It was small, but beautiful. The walls were warm and dark. Italian music played softly. The baristas wore clean uniforms. The coffee wasn't just good, it was excellent. And people noticed. They came in, curious. They stayed, surprised. They smiled. They came back. Il Giornale was a success. Soon he opened a second location, then a third. The vision was working. Not just in theory, but in real life, real customers, real sales, real moments happening every day. Howard was proving the doubters wrong. not with anger, not with revenge, but with excellence. He let the experience speak for itself. And then, just when things were going well, something unexpected happened. The original founders of Starbucks decided they wanted to sell the company. They were tired. They weren't interested in growing or changing. Starbucks had only 6 stores at the time. To most people, it wasn't even worth buying, but to Howard, it was everything. This was his chance. He could take Starbucks and bring it to life, not just as a bean seller, but as a cafe experience. He could merge Il Giornale's energy with Starbucks' name. He could make it global. But again, there was a problem: money. To buy Starbucks, he needed $8 million. He didn't have it. So once again, he started asking, and once again, people doubted him. Some even tried to block him. One investor tried to buy Starbucks out from under him. Howard didn't give up. He went back to the investors who had believed in Il Giornale. He made new calls. He knocked on more doors. And in time, he raised the full amount. In August 1987, Howard Schultz bought Starbucks. He merged the two companies. He became CEO. And just like that, he wasn't just running cafes anymore. He was building a movement. The big risk had paid off. But Howard knew this was just the beginning. Now came the harder part: turning a dream into a system, a story into a strategy, and a single cafe into a global brand. But if anyone was ready to fight for a vision, it was the boy from Brooklyn. The same boy who watched his father struggle with dignity. The same young man who walked the streets of Milan and saw a new kind of life. The same dreamer who turned no into not yet. Howard Schultz had risked everything, and now he had a chance to build something that would change the way the world drinks coffee. But more than that, he had a chance to change how people feel. One cup at a time. Chapter 5. Building a Brand. In 1987, Howard Schultz became the CEO and owner of Starbucks. He had just taken the biggest risk of his life, raising millions to buy a company most people didn't believe in. Starbucks had only a few stores. It was known for selling high-quality coffee beans, but not for anything more. Now, Howard had the chance to shape it into something bigger, something more human. But he wasn't interested in building just another business. He wanted to build a brand with meaning, a company based on values, a place that stood for something. He sat down with his small team and said, "We are not in the coffee business. We are in the people business, serving coffee." That one sentence changed everything. Howard believed that Starbucks should not only sell great coffee, but also create a great experience. Every store should feel welcoming. Every customer should feel seen. Every barista should feel respected. He remembered his father, a hard-working man who had no job security, no health care, no dignity at work. Howard promised himself he would build a different kind of company, one where people mattered. He started with the employees. He didn't call them workers or staff. He called them partners. From the beginning, every Starbucks employee received health benefits, even part-time workers. This was unheard of in the service industry. He also gave them stock options, meaning they could own a small piece of the company. Howard believed that when people feel valued, they give their best. And he was right. Starbucks became known as a great place to work. People weren't just making coffee. They were building something together. They were part of a team. They were part of a story. Next, Howard focused on the customer experience. He wanted each Starbucks store to be more than a place to buy coffee. It should be a third place, not home, not work, but a space in between. A space where people could sit, relax, read, talk, or just enjoy a quiet moment. The lighting was warm, the music was calm, the chairs were soft, the menu was simple. Everything was carefully designed to make people feel good. Baristas didn't just take orders. They made conversation. They learned your name. They remembered your favorite drink. Starbucks wasn't trying to be fast like a drive-through. It was trying to be personal. And it worked. In a world that was moving faster and getting colder, Starbucks offered something rare: comfort. As the company grew, Howard made sure the values stayed strong. He trained new managers not just in business, but in leadership. He told them, "We are not building a product. We are building a culture." Every decision, from store design to hiring, had to reflect the values of respect, dignity, and connection. By the early 1990s, Starbucks was expanding fast. New stores opened in new cities. People lined up to get their lattes, cappuccinos, and espressos. But it wasn't just the coffee that brought them in. It was how Starbucks made them feel. Each cup carried more than caffeine. It carried a small moment of peace, a daily ritual, a sense of place. Howard never forgot where he came from. He visited stores often, talked with employees, listened to feedback. He wasn't sitting in a glass office far away. He was present. He was involved. When Starbucks went public in 1992, it was already a success story. But Howard still believed they were just getting started. He didn't chase profits. He chased purpose. In meetings with shareholders, he often said, "If we take care of our people, the profits will come." That belief became the foundation of the brand. As Starbucks grew into a national and then global company, people asked, "What's the secret? Why did it work?" The answer was simple. Howard didn't just build stores. He built trust. He respected his team. He respected his customers. He believed in quality, not just of the product, but of the entire experience. Of course, there were challenges. Not every store was perfect, not every decision easy, but the core never changed. Starbucks stood for something. Howard also made social responsibility part of the brand. The company supported fair trade coffee, helping farmers earn better wages. They worked on reducing waste, supporting communities, and promoting education. Starbucks didn't just want to be big, it wanted to be good. By the late 1990s, Starbucks had hundreds of stores. Soon it would have thousands. And yet, in every store, you could feel the original spirit, the heart, the idea that people come first. Howard often reminded his team, "Success is empty if you leave your values behind." That's why, even as the company exploded in size, it never lost its mission. Starbucks became more than a brand. It became part of people's lives. Students studied there. Friends caught up over coffee. Writers found inspiration. Travelers found comfort. Workers found kindness. It was more than a place. It was a part of the day. Howard Schultz didn't just grow a business. He grew a movement, a global brand built not on speed or hype or discounts, but on care. That's how you build something that lasts. Not with ads, not with tricks, but with heart, with service, with respect. That's how Starbucks became Starbucks. Chapter 6: Failure, Pressure, Comeback. By the early 2000s, Starbucks was everywhere. The brand had exploded across America and beyond. From New York to Tokyo, from London to Dubai, people lined up each morning for their favorite drink. The green logo had become a symbol, not just of coffee, but of culture. Howard Schultz had done something incredible. He had taken a small coffee bean store in Seattle and turned it into a global powerhouse. But growth comes with pressure, and sometimes success can become your biggest challenge. Starbucks was opening new stores at lightning speed. Every day, somewhere in the world, a new location was opening. Investors were happy. Sales were up. But something was changing, and not in a good way. The stores were starting to feel different. They were faster, busier, colder. The music got louder. The lines got longer. The personal touch began to fade. Baristas were rushed. Customers were numbers, not names. The smell of fresh coffee, once strong and inviting, was now hidden behind automatic machines. Howard felt it. He walked into a store one day and thought, "This doesn't feel like Starbucks anymore." The warmth was missing. The soul was fading. The brand he built with love and care was starting to slip away. In 2000, after years of leading the company, Howard stepped down as CEO. He passed the leadership to someone else. He stayed involved as chairman, but stepped away from day-to-day operations. At first, it seemed fine. The company kept growing, but over time, the cracks started to show. Between 2007 and 2008, the world faced a major financial crisis. People were spending less. Coffee sales dropped. Starbucks stores began to close. Stock prices fell. News outlets asked, "Has Starbucks peaked?" The company was struggling, and worse, it had lost its direction. Howard watched from the side. It hurt. He didn't blame anyone, but he knew. Starbucks had drifted too far from its values. In early 2008, the board asked Howard to return as CEO. The company needed a comeback. It needed its heart back. Howard agreed, but it wouldn't be easy. When he returned, Starbucks was in trouble. Customers were leaving. Employees were unsure. Investors were nervous. Many people thought the brand was too big to fix. But Howard didn't panic. He didn't look for quick answers. He went back to the basics. His first move shocked everyone. He closed all 7,100 stores in the U.S. for one day, just to retrain baristas, to bring back quality, to refocus on craft. That day, Starbucks lost millions in revenue, but it sent a loud message. We care more about getting it right than making a fast buck. Next, Howard changed the coffee machines. He removed the ones that blocked the smell of coffee. He brought back the aroma, the magic, the experience. He also slowed down store growth. He stopped opening new locations and focused on fixing the ones they already had. Every store had to feel like Starbucks again. Every drink had to be made with pride. He spoke to partners. He traveled. He listened. He led from the front. People felt it. Customers noticed. Slowly, the trust returned. Howard also made tough decisions. He had to close underperforming stores. He had to cut costs. But he did it carefully. Always with the human side in mind. Always with honesty and heart. He pushed the company to innovate again. Starbucks began offering new drinks, healthier options, and digital tools like mobile ordering. They started rewarding loyal customers with points and personalized offers. The app became one of the most used in retail. And most of all, he reminded everyone, this is not just about coffee. This is about connection, about dignity, about creating a space that matters. By 2010, Starbucks was back. Sales were strong. Customers were returning. The brand had not only survived the storm, it had come out stronger. People asked Howard how he did it, how he saved the company when so many had given up. His answer was simple. We returned to our values. We returned to our mission. We put people first. That's what true leadership looks like. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about what you do after failure. When the spotlight fades, when the noise dies down, when it's just you, your team, and a decision. Howard Schultz faced failure. He faced pressure, but he didn't run. He returned. And he rescued not just a company, but a culture. Because real success isn't about never falling. It's about rising again, with more wisdom, more strength, and more heart than before. Chapter 7. The bigger message. By the time Starbucks had become a global brand, with tens of thousands of stores, millions of customers, and billions in revenue, Howard Schultz had already proved something important. Success is possible, even when you start with nothing. But for Howard, the story was never just about coffee. It was never just about profits. It was always about people. He often said, "We are not in the coffee business serving people. We are in the people business serving coffee." And he meant it, because when you looked closely at what Starbucks really was, you didn't just see espresso machines or drink menus. You saw opportunity. You saw people who had never been given a real chance, young students, single parents, immigrants, veterans, getting jobs, building careers, gaining respect. Howard remembered his father, Fred Schultz, who had worked tough jobs his whole life, driving trucks, lifting boxes, and never once receiving health insurance or a thank you. He had seen his father injured and forgotten by the system. That pain stuck with Howard, deep in his soul. So, when he built Starbucks, he built it differently. He gave health care to all employees, even part-timers. He offered stock ownership so partners could share in the company's success. He paid for college education through Starbucks' tuition assistance program, and he made sure that every store, no matter where it was, had a culture of respect. This was personal for him. It wasn't a marketing trick. It was a mission. And as the company grew, so did the impact. People around the world, whether in Seattle or Seoul, Chicago or Cairo, were stepping into stores and being treated with dignity. Employees were trained to connect, not just serve. Customers felt like more than customers. And that's why they came back. Howard believed that business could be a force for good, not just for shareholders, but for society. He spoke openly about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. He challenged other leaders to think bigger, to lead with purpose, not just pressure. He wasn't perfect, and neither was Starbucks. There were mistakes along the way, controversies, setbacks, missteps. But what mattered most was that the company kept trying to improve. It kept asking, what do we stand for? Who are we helping? How can we do better? That kind of thinking is rare in the business world. Most companies focus only on numbers. Howard focused on values. He used his platform to talk about race, equality, education, mental health, and economic opportunity. He opened stores in underserved neighborhoods. He hired refugees and veterans. He used the power of a global brand to try to make the world a little more human. He didn't have to, but he chose to. Because Howard Schultz knew something many leaders forget. The real success of a company is not measured by what it earns, but by what it gives. That's the bigger message. Yes, Starbucks is about coffee, but behind every cup is a human being, growing the beans, making the drink, drinking it on their way to work, using the cafe as a place to think, meet, or rest. Behind every location is a team. Behind every decision, a story. And behind all of it was a kid from Brooklyn who saw his father get hurt and decided, when I build something, I'll do it differently. Howard Schultz didn't just build a brand. He built a movement, one grounded in dignity, driven by connection, and guided by the belief that everyone deserves a chance. That belief is what brought him from public housing to the boardroom, from poverty to purpose, from rejection to respect. And that's why this story matters, not just for business people or entrepreneurs or coffee lovers, but for anyone who's ever wondered if they could rise, even when the odds are against them. Because if you take away the stores, the stock, the global reach, and the headlines, what you're left with is a simple truth. Treat people well, lead with heart, and never forget where you came from. That's the real message behind the Starbucks story. And that's what makes Howard Schultz a voice the world now follows. You've just finished the powerful story of Howard Schultz, the boy from Brooklyn who never gave up. From poverty to purpose, from rejection to respect, he proved that success doesn't come from where you start. It comes from what you believe. And that belief is something you can carry, not just in business, but in life, and even in your English learning journey. If you stayed with us through the whole video, you didn't just listen to a story. You trained your brain. You trained your ear. You trained your speaking muscle. You practiced English in a way that's meaningful, natural, and unforgettable. This is what Read and Learn English is all about, real learning through real stories. Stories like this help you understand more than just words. They show you the rhythm of English, the tone, the flow. You didn't just hear words, you heard emotion. You saw how ideas build from one sentence to the next. That's fluency. That's how native speakers communicate. That's what you're learning right now. Maybe some parts were easy. Maybe some parts were hard. That's okay. Learning a language is not a straight line. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes patience. But if you keep showing up, keep listening, keep speaking, your English will grow. Just like Howard's journey, your progress will come step by step, one small win at a time. Now take a moment and ask yourself, what part of the story inspired you the most? Was it when he walked away from safety to chase a bigger dream? Was it when he faced 200 rejections but kept going? Was it the comeback after failure? Whatever part spoke to you, let it stay with you. Because that feeling, that spark, is what keeps learning alive. This video was made for learners like you. People who want more than grammar tips. People who want to understand, feel, and grow. If this story helped you, share it with someone else who's learning English. Leave a comment and tell us which part you liked most. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another story. Every week, we bring you content that's built for real learners. Clear English, powerful topics, and lessons that stick. Because you don't just need more words, you need the right words, spoken in the right way, at the right time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending this hour learning, growing, and believing in yourself. This is more than a video. It's a step toward your future, and we're honored to be a part of it. This is Read and Learn English, and we'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep practicing, keep dreaming, keep moving forward. Your story is just beginning.